Do you want to take your piano accompaniment to the next level? Well, when pro musicians talk about accompaniment, they actually use the word comping. And if you listen closely to a pro musician comp, you'll discover that there are just 6 techniques that they use the majority of the time. So in today's lesson, I'm not only going to show you these 6 techniques, but how you can use them on a popular song. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, we're gonna use the tune Happy Birthday because everyone knows this tune. I'm gonna very briefly review the chords and then we're gonna jump into these 6 techniques. So we're in the key of F. We're gonna use an F6 chord on the first chord and then down to a C7, really simple, right? C7 again, and then back to an F6 chord. And we continue, it's like an F7. This is a B flat 6. G7, it's all white notes, C7, and then back to our F6. So once you have these chords, how do you comp or accompany if you're playing with other musicians? Well, we're gonna start at level 1. This is more of the beginner level, so if you're more on the beginner side, this is for you. And by the way, we're gonna play Happy Birthday in more of a Latin style. We call this bossa nova if you're playing jazz. I'll play it for you, and then I'm gonna break down exactly what I'm doing. So what am I playing? Well, I'll show you in just a moment, but before we do this, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this. So I'm using a technique called chord shells, and it is a really cool technique where you play 3 notes from the chord, 2 notes in the right hand, 1 note in your left hand, and you get some really nice chords without having to play a lot of notes or having to jump around very much. So for these chord shells, it's really simple. Basically, we're gonna take each of our chords and we're gonna take the 3rd and the 7th, we're gonna put that in our right hand, and then we're gonna drop the root down, and you get a really nice sounding chord, okay? Now for the next chord, it's a C7, and we have the 3rd and the 7th, the E and the B flat. Well, guess what? We can play them here in the right hand and drop the root down like this, okay? And so notice that both of these chords share the E. You got the F major 7, and then the C7. And so this is something that you want to do with chord shells, is you want to look for common notes between the chords so that your right hand does not have to jump too much between the chords, okay? We're going to go back to our F major 7 chord, then we have an F7 chord. Look how these 2 chords share the A, so you just drop down to the 7th, that's the E flat. Then a beautiful B flat major 7. Again, you can look at the original chord. There's the 3rd and the 7th, and we're gonna play it up here since the F7 was the previous chord. So there's that common tone. And then we go to our G7. There's the 3rd and the 7th, and then the C7. There's the 7th and the 3rd. Again, you can go back to your original chord to figure it out. And then we go back to our F major 7. Now, these chords are called 2-hand voicings, meaning we're playing the chords in both hands. Sometimes when you're accompanying, you could play the chords in one hand, but for all the techniques that I'm going to show you in this lesson, they're going to involve both of your hands. By the way, if you want to learn more about chord shells, you want to learn exercises to master them, how to play them in all of your keys, how to use them on tunes, check out our Level 4 Foundations learning track over at pianowithjonny.com. I'll put a link to that below. All right, Level 2 is what's called the Rootless voicing technique. For this technique, you're going to use some beautiful chords in your right hand that have a ton of color. I'll play through Happy Birthday using this technique, and then I'm going to show you exactly how to play these chords. Here we go. So how am I playing these beautiful chords? Well, rootless voicing chords have 2 essential characteristics. One is that they usually do not have a root in the chord. So if it's an F chord, there's no F in the chord. And second, they usually contain one or more chord extensions. And for rootless chords, the two chord extensions that we typically use are the note just above the root, which we call the 9, and the sixth note above the root, which we actually call the 13. So if you look at our first chord, this beautiful F chord, there's no root in the right hand, there's no F, and we're using the G, which is the 9th of the chord. So we call this chord an F major 9, okay? Look at the second chord, super beautiful C13 chord, and this is basically a C7 chord. There's the 3rd and the 7, but I'm adding the 9, and I'm adding the 13 to this chord. From here, we're gonna go back to our F major 9 chord, and the next chord sounds beautiful. Okay, this is that F7 chord, but I'm adding the 9 and the 13 to this chord. Okay, really beautiful. Next chord, there's that B flat major chord. There's the 7th and the 3rd. Those are the chord shells, and I'm adding the 9 to this chord. Again, no root in the right hand of this chord. Then we're off to a G chord. Super beautiful. Okay, this is a G7. There's the chord shell, there's the 9 and the 13. And then our C7, it's gonna be right there, back to our F major 9. By the way, if you want to do a deep dive on rootless voicing chords, you want to learn how to play these on any type of chord, on any chord progression, use them on tunes, play exercises to master them, you can learn all of this in our Level 6 Foundations learning track. I'll put a link to that below. All right, the Level 3 technique is a beautiful technique that I love to use if I want to spread my chords out like this, okay? So I'm gonna play this on Happy Birthday, and then I'm gonna break down exactly what I'm doing. Here we go. So how am I playing this technique? Well, what you want to do first is you want to take each of your chords and pick an inversion to start with. So for the first chord, F6, I decided to start this in 3rd inversion. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd inversion has the C on top. And from here, you're going to play the rest of the chords, but you want to find the closest inversions. So for the next chord, the C chord, I play it here. Okay, so it's like a C7, and I'm adding the 9 on top for a little more color, all right? Then we're gonna go back to our F chord. We can use the same chord, our F6. Next chord is our F7. I'm gonna play it like this, okay? Look at that right hand. Here's the notes from our F7, and I'm adding the 9 for a little more color. Then we go to our B flat chord. I'm gonna play it right here. This is that B flat 6 chord, and I'm simply inverting the chord. Again, I'm looking for the closest chord each time I change chords. Then the G chord, okay, beautiful G9 chord, has the notes from G7, and I'm adding the 9 to this. And then back to the C chord, same one we used earlier, and we're gonna end on our F6 chord. All right, once you've played these chords, then you're ready to use the drop 2 technique. And for drop 2, all we're gonna do is take the 2nd note from the top, and we're gonna drop it down to our left hand down here. And you get this beautiful sound where you get this lovely 10th interval between the top note and bottom note, okay? So let's apply this to all of the chords, and you're gonna hear how beautiful this sounds. So F, it's gonna be here. The C7 or C9 chord is going to be here, okay? So we're taking that B flat, dropping it down, and then we come back to our F6 chord. Next is our F9 chord. There it is. Remember the original chord had the A there. We're dropping it down to the bottom, okay? Next chord is the B flat chord. We're going to play it here. Again, we're just dropping that B flat, the 2nd voice, down to the bottom. Then the G chord is going to be there. We just drop the B down. Back to the C chord, we drop the B flat down, and finally we're going to end on the F6. Now if you want to do a deep dive on drop 2 chords, you want to learn exercises to master them in different keys, you want to play these on different lead sheet tunes, check out our Level 8 Foundations learning track. I'll put a link to that below. All right, we are on to level 4, and for this technique, we're going to use a very classic jazz sound that uses some crunchy chords called block chords. On Happy Birthday, I'm going to play these chords on the tune, and then I'm going to break down exactly what I'm doing. Here we go. By the way, I wanted to mention that the lesson sheet music is downloadable and printable. You can also change the key of this entire lesson with the click of one button with our smart sheet music, so I'll put a link to all of that below. So how do you play block chords? Well, it's actually very simple. What you want to do is you want to take your first chord, we said it's an F6, and you want to play an octave on the outside. Okay, so whenever you play block chords, you always want to have the octave on the outside, and then you're going to have 3 notes in the middle for a total of 5 notes. So let's do this on all of the chords. F6 is going to be here. Let's find a close C chord. Well, why don't we play it here, okay? These are the notes of the C7, and I've got the 9 in there with the octaves on the outside. Does that make sense? And then we're going to go to our F6 chord, but let's bring it up. Just make it a little more interesting with the melody, and we'll play it here. Now our next chord is that F7 chord. Let's stay on the A and change the notes. So we've got the 7 there, we've got the 9 for some color, really beautiful. Next chord is the B flat 6 chord. We could go up, but I'm going to go down just because I like the sound of descending. So we're going to go here for that B flat 6 chord. Again, we've got the octave on the outside, 3 notes in the middle, and the final 3 chords. There's that beautiful G7. I'm using the 9 on the outside with the chord tones in the middle. The C7 or the C9, same chord as before, and we're going to end on the F6 like this. Now, those are the notes for the block chords, but you may have noticed when I was playing Happy Birthday, I was playing these little extra chords, these passing chords. Okay? And so what I'm doing there is I'm actually using some diminished chords that kind of fill in the gap and bring me back to my original chord, okay? So the diminished chord is actually a C diminished. So I'm going like C7, C diminished, C7. And the way I'm doing that with the block chords is I'm here, here's my C diminished, and then I'm going back to my C9, okay? And you can do this on all the chords, right? Here's my F6, that's my F diminished, back to F6. By the way, if you want to do a deep dive on block chords, you want to learn pretty much everything you need to know about block chords, how to master them, how to use them in tunes, check out our Level 7 Foundations learning track. I'll put a link to that below. All right, Level 5 is a very hip, modern technique using what are called quartal chords. I'm going to play Happy Birthday using these chords, and then I'm going to break down exactly how you can play this technique. Here we go. So what is the formula for playing quartal voicings? Well, quartal chords are chords that are primarily made up of fourth intervals. So instead of playing major chords using these third intervals, you actually want to break your chords up into fourth intervals. So if you look at your first chord, our F6 chord, if you start with a third on the bottom and you go fourth intervals up the piano, you end up with some really beautiful notes that belong to our F6 chord. You have the third, the sixth, the ninth, the fifth, and the root. Okay, doesn't that sound nice? Then for the C9 chord, you can play it like this, okay? I've got the seventh on the bottom, and I'm going up an augmented fourth, a fourth, a fourth, and a fourth, okay? I've got the 7, 3rd, 13, 9, and 5, okay? Really beautiful chord. And then we go back to our F6-9 chord like this. Next, we play our F9 chord. We only need to change one note to the E flat like this. Next is our B flat 6-9 chord. Look at this one. We're starting with the root. We do have a third on the bottom, but from here, they're all perfect fourth intervals, okay? This is a B flat 6-9. And then our G chord, it's gonna be here. We're starting with the third on the bottom, and we have primarily fourth intervals. We have the third, seventh, ninth, fifth, and root. And our C7 chord, keep the right hand the same, 7, third, 13, 9, and 5, and finally end on the F6-9. For a deep dive on Quartal voicings, check out our Level 9 Foundations Learning track. You'll learn everything that you need to know about these voicings. I'll put a link to that below. All right, we are in Level 6, and for this approach, we're gonna get a really big sound at the piano. This is the Red Garland approach to playing. Red Garland was a famous jazz pianist who loved to use these really big voicings in both hands. So I'm gonna play Happy Birthday using this system, and then I'm gonna break it down for you. Here we go. So what am I playing? Well, it's actually pretty simple. I'm playing rootless voicing chords in my left hand. So for the F chord, this is an F6-9. This is a standard, or what we call stock rootless voicing. And then in my right hand, what I want to do is I want to grab one of the chord tones. Usually I do the root, third, or fifth. In this case, I'm going to pick the fifth, and I'm going to add one chord tone in the middle. So in this case, I'm going to add an F in the middle. You could add an A in the middle if you wanted. And so this becomes our first voicing. Okay? So that's step one. And then what you want to do is you want to tremolo the chord. Okay? This is basically where you rock all of the notes of the chord like this. It has a really cool sound to it. Okay? So that's the first chord, F6-9. Then the C chord, we're gonna play it like this. There's the rootless voicing. And then in the right hand, I'm gonna grab the 9 here, which has a really nice sound to it. So you can play a chord extension in your right hand. You don't always have to play a chord tone, okay? Then we go back to our F chord. We're gonna play it like this. For the F9 chord, beautiful. There's the rootless voicing for the F7 chord. I'm going to put the 13, which is a chord extension, in the right hand. And for the internal note, I'm going to use the 9 here. Okay, so you can change up the internal note. It doesn't always have to be a chord tone. You can use chord extensions. Okay? To the B flat chord, we're going to play it like this. This is a rootless voicing for the B flat 6-9. Then in my right hand, I'm going to use the 9 with a chord tone. This is the 5th in the right hand. And then I'm going to bring it down just to create some melodic movement. And then the final chords, beautiful G9 chord. There's the rootless voicing. There's the chord tone in the middle. The C chord, it's going to be here, really beautiful rootless voicing. Right hand chord tone octaves, chord tone in the middle. And then we end on the F6-9 like this. By the way, if you want to do a deep dive on the Red Garland style of playing, I also call this the big band style. Check out our course, 5 Jazz Comping Approaches. You'll learn this technique among other comping techniques. I'll put a link to that below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this lesson, please let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out pianowithjonny.com. We have over 1,000 step-by-step lessons for all playing levels where you'll learn your favorite songs, styles, and how to improvise at the piano. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.